Afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nigel Rotter. I'm Assistant Director for Core Service Delivery at Royal Holloway, University of London. I've been a member of the IG committee for a number of years, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, David Cottee from Oracle. David has been at Oracle for 20 years, so he's seen customers who've had to adapt to previous paradigm shifts, such as the evolution of client-server computing, the rise of the internet, and the dot-com boom. He was responsible for the launch of Oracle Technology Cloud Services back in 2015, helping to formulate Oracle's go-to-market strategy across UK and Ireland. In his current role, David leads Oracle's business development and sales consultancy practices as a service and is passionate about helping customers understand and realise the value of the cloud. So David, come to the stage. Over to you.
Thanks, Nigel. Okay, am I on? Good, thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for that welcome, Nigel. So I am David Cottee. I'm the Platform Services Director for Oracle UK and Ireland. And it's great to be here today talking to you about the software-defined world of IT. It's something in Oracle we spend a huge amount of time, effort and money on. And just to put that into a bit of context for you, in Oracle we spend something like $5.5 billion a year in R&D. A huge proportion of that goes into our infrastructure as a service. Did everyone know we do infrastructure as a service at Oracle? I noticed earlier when Arthur mentioned the cloud vendors, we weren't there. Sorry, I'll get over it. So this is a relatively new thing for Oracle. Software as a service we've been doing for 5, 6, 7 years, very successfully, but newer to the market in infrastructure and platform services. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm not here to sell. I'm not allowed to. But I'm just going to talk about a little bit about our experience in terms of rolling out these cloud services and what that might look like for you as education institutions. So like I say, I'm not going to talk about the what so much. I want to sort of take a step back from that and think about why. Why bother with any of this software-defined data center, networking, storage? What does it all mean? Because I think sometimes when we sort of get on the sort of tide of these paradigm shifts, as Nigel put it, sometimes it's helpful just to sort of take a step back and think, well, why do we do this again? And what's the real purpose? What do I get out of this? What's the business outcome I'm actually going to achieve? So at Oracle, we like data. We love data. And in fact, for those of you that don't know, Oracle was born from a project 35, 36, nearly 40 years ago with the CIA. And the CIA wanted a way to better secure, to manage and share data, share intelligence. And so Larry and his friends at the time got together and we built the Oracle database. Say we, I wasn't there. But you know, the Oracle database was born, and that's the origins of Oracle. So we like data. But we also like to look at data about what our customers and our prospective customers are doing. And we've been looking at our own surveys, we've been looking at third-party surveys and analyst reports and all kinds of things for many years. And it's interesting when we look at the sort of priorities and expectations from cloud, that they haven't really changed for 4, 5, 6 years. They've actually remained the same things. What we've noticed, though, is the priority, the order of priority has changed a little bit. So what we always used, and sorry, by the way, these aren't in any particular order, but what we always used to see at the top of the list was security. And security, you know, has been mentioned in the previous session. It's a challenge. It's really hard. But actually, as we've seen the cloud model mature a little bit, and we've seen that actually organizations are a little bit more accepting, perhaps, that if I move to, it could be Amazon's cloud, to Microsoft Cloud, to Oracle Cloud, security ought to be something that us as vendors are probably pretty good at. You know, if you move to an Oracle database in the Oracle public cloud, we ought to be pretty good at securing that and managing the security around it. After all, that's our heritage. So we've seen the order of priorities change a little bit. But let's just quickly run through these. Always on availability. I don't need to tell you the virtues of cloud, but you know, you expect to be able to access anything from any time, from any device. You want to innovate faster. You want to focus your efforts on, you know, some of those projects that are going to bring value to your organization, not just keeping the lights on all the time. Security I've mentioned. you want it to be cheaper, okay? And it was interesting to hear Arthur's comments before about actually scoping out the cloud worked out more expensive, and that's, I guess, a conversation we'll have later, and just to understand that a bit better. And it's about choice. It's about, you know, it needs to be easy. Look, if I distill this down to kind of three concepts, really. Lowest common denominators. If I move to the cloud, I want it to be easier, I want it to be quicker, and I want it to be cheaper. So these are the three concepts, the three guiding principles. If I move to the cloud, these are the things that I ought to be able to expect. So, how does that work? I'm going to sort of step into a metaphor, and this is a complete phony, a complete lie, because I was going to talk about how I drove up here on the motorway, and I didn't. I came on a train in the end. But we'll run with it anyway. It's still valid. Why am I looking at the motorway? When I use a motorway, when I get out of my house and I get in the car and I drive up the M1 or down the M1, there's certain things I ought to be able to take for granted. I don't have to do a lot of planning and research into, is there going to be a central reservation that keeps me safe from traffic coming the other way? Is there going to be a hard shoulder where I can, if there's something wrong with my car, I can move over and I can get that sorted out? Is there going to be a service station? If I need fuel, I can stop and fill up, get a cup of coffee. You get the idea. So all of these things I didn't need to plan before I left the house and got on the motorway. And this is, when I talk about cloud maturity, this is where we're arriving with a lot of these kind of expectations about cloud as well. I ought to be able to take some of these things for granted. And I'm not suggesting that we forget all due diligence. We don't bother about, is it secure or not? Well, we'll just assume it is. But we're actually arriving at a point now where we can actually think about, I don't need to plan my whole journey. And by the way, the other things I expect on a motorway is a slip road to get on it and to get off it. And cloud ought to be like that too. So it's a bit of a glib analogy, I appreciate that, but it's helpful to sort of think about, well, what are the things that now cloud is becoming more mature? What ought I be able to expect from it as I get on and get off? Okay, so if it's true, and we'll have to look at it in closer detail, but if it's true I want things to be quicker, easier and cheaper, then the next question I ought to be asking is, well, how much cheaper, how much quicker, and how much easier can I make it? I mean, what's the end of the road look like for me on this? And so, when we talk about the software-defined world, we typically think about infrastructure. We think about the software-defined data center, we think about networking, storage, and that's fine. And there's definite gains to be made in the infrastructure as a service world. But if we sort of go up to the top of the scale for a moment and think about software as a service, if the business outcome I want to achieve is just doing HR, it's probably going to be quicker, easier and cheaper just to consume HR as a service, as a software as a service, rather than worry about building something on infrastructure as a service. Pretty obvious, okay, I know, but I'm just highlighting a point here. So there's an architectural principle in play here, that the higher I can get up this stack, probably the easier, the cheaper, the quicker I can consume IT. Now, there's three levels. Platform as a service is the piece I look after for Oracle, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at that today, because I want to think about, well, because at one end, if I consume a service, software as a service, like HR or ERP or payroll or whatever it might be, I get to consume it more or less as is. I don't get to customize it too much. I don't get much flexibility. I don't get to create too much of my own sort of bespoke variety of that application. It comes as it is. Whereas back down the bottom of the stack, infrastructure as a service, I can do pretty much whatever I like, subject to a few things like, well, what operating system is it, unless it's bare metal, and I could do virtually anything I want. So this world in between, this platform as a service world, this is kind of a middle ground. This is where I can actually get almost the best of both worlds. I can start to consume services that are built, that are purpose-built for the outcome I want, whether that's database or whether it's middleware environment or might be business intelligence, a whole world of things, and we'll look at that in a moment. Slightly less flexibility. I can't do anything I want, but if the platform is available as a service, I ought to think about that if I want to maximize quicker, cheaper, easier. So let me try and explain that more. Bit of a boring diagram, but if I just approach my IT from an infrastructure as a service angle, what I'm really saying is I've got a stack of cost that's facilities and a stack of cost that's hardware. And what I want to do is I want to shrink that down. I want to pay less for that. So I'll go into the cloud and I'll consume Amazon, I'll consume Oracle, Microsoft, doesn't matter. But I ought to be able to shrink down the cost of my facilities, so my data center, the cooling. You're probably not going to shrink it much if it's a bunch of fans sitting on a thing and it's just open doors. But if it's a proper cooling facility, you're going to shrink that down. The hardware cost, you're going to shrink it down. It kind of makes sense, right? So it's a good economic model. And who wouldn't want to reduce the cost of those things? The issue with that is that if you look at the overall cost stack of running, and let's use database as an example, running a database environment, this is a proportionally representation of the costs involved in running that environment. So software typically is around 20-25% of the overall cost. That big kind of pinky stack on top is the operational cost, so the patching, the upgrading, the backing up, the configuration, the keeping the lights on. You know, we keep hearing the statistic all the time that, you know, 80% of IT budgets are spent on just keeping lights on, and it's because of this operational cost. So if I can therefore consume database as a cloud service, what I'm really saying is I can shrink down all of those costs. I can shrink down the software cost, I can shrink down the operational cost. So in this particular example, if I'm consuming Oracle's database cloud service, what I'm actually doing is I'm saying, well, in that operational expense of cloud, I've got the license cost involved in there, I've got the Oracle's going to patch it, upgrade it, back it up, feed and water it, and of course that's running on our infrastructure in our data center. So now I've moved from just shrinking down my hardware and my facilities cost to shrinking the whole cost down into a manageable operational expense. Now, this is a bit of a dangerous slide to show in a room full of people from IT, because you think, well, does that mean I get rid of everybody that used to do that stuff? And that isn't the suggestion at all, and that's why I call it value creation rather than cost saving. Because what it really means is that you can focus your time and efforts and energy on doing something that's a little bit more important than just patching, backing up, upgrading those kind of day-to-day tasks. So that's just a bit of a visual way to represent the cost saving of approaching the cloud as a platform service. Okay, so let's say tomorrow we're going to do a new research project. The physics department want to go into the world of gravitational wave exploration. We're going to discover the origins of the universe, etc. Right? So let's be probably quite conservative, but let's say there's going to be 1,000 people. And that might be some people, there might be students in the university, there might be researchers, there may be, you may have got grants from other organisations, and those organisations might be involved in accessing systems. You might have other geographical locations and partner universities, etc., all accessing and trying to help on this particular research project. Compounding that problem is the mixture of different stuff that they're using, different operating systems, different platforms, different code bases, different databases, different everything. It's just a little bit hard to control. And I don't have to tell you, you know better than me the challenge to try and provision that internally, whether you're trying to do that from a virtual machine point of view or whether you're trying to do it from a physical machine point of view. It's practically impossible. And so we start to think, so is public cloud the answer to this question? Can I actually achieve this through public cloud? Well, the answer, of course, is yes. And if we go back to our idea of infrastructure as a service, shrinking down this cost, fine. I can let all these people go off and do whatever they want, really, on different infrastructure service, or even on the same infrastructure as a service. It doesn't matter whether it's all Amazon, all Oracle, doesn't matter. The problem with this is that your architecture ends up looking a little bit like that, because and we call this accidental architecture. And this isn't a problem unique to universities, by the way. This is rife across industry, across huge corporations, across the FTSE 100 and the S&P 500. They all have this problem, and we see it time and time again, is that when you start on the left and you end up on the right without proper architectural planning, you just end up with a mess that is insecure, so the data isn't secured. The data is, you probably don't even know where it all is. How do you manage, in the previous session was talking about things like charging back and show back. That's very difficult. You don't know where everything lives. So infrastructure as a service, although great, and it's a brilliant thing, and I'm not here to tell you otherwise, we have to think about a better answer to this question. So go back to the principle then. We've got infrastructure, we've got platform, and we've got software in this. So I ask the question, I go as far up the stack as I possibly can. Does gravitational wave exploration as a service actually exist? Of course, probably not. I can't consume that as a software as a service. But what I can do is I can think about, well, what platform services are going to help me to achieve and help my students and researchers and all of the other parties involved embark on this project, but give me the security, give me the consistency, give me the rich analytical capabilities that I want, give me the integration capabilities I want. So a lot of that can happen at the platform level. So it needs consideration. So this is platform as a service from Oracle's point of view. And by the way, this isn't all of Oracle's platform services. There are more. But I want to give you a feel for what a consistent, robust platform might look like. And we're not going to go into each thing, but let's just look at the headings. So from the development point of view, what do you get? Well, you get a choice of development platforms, so different IDEs. And it's not just Java, because it's Oracle. I mean, it's not just SQL either. You can there's Node.js, there's PHP, Ruby, all of those things inside a single browser window into a development environment. But it's consistent, it's secure. You know where it is. Data management, I've already talked about the heritage of Oracle. You know, we grew up as a database company. We now have thousands of other products and services. But we're pretty good at managing data, and we're pretty good at securing data. And this is not always about network security. This is about security. We call it defense in depth. So you secure the database. You have segregation of duties inside the database. I mean, Oracle has security at every layer in the cloud, even down to the chip that runs on. The M7 chip that we have has security built in. Management, you know, Matt, was it from Loughborough, you're talking about, you know, how do you manage this stuff? People are asking for VMs all over the place. Well, we have cloud solutions that can help you with that. IT analytics does exactly what you're asking, predictive analysis of capacity planning. What am I going to need? And that's not just looking at your Oracle estate, that's looking heterogeneously across everything. How do I do rapid root cause analysis and rapid problem isolation of my applications or whatever else I'm running? It's in this stack. It works in the cloud. Integration, another challenge. Content and collaboration. You know, how do people collaborate on this project that we're talking about? Well, that stuff's in the platform as well. You get the idea. So these things are all built on the same platform. They're consistent with each other. They work together. They're designed to work together. If you've ever heard Oracle go on about engineered systems, we talk about the stack of stuff that works together. Well, our cloud's the same thing. It works all together. It's designed that way. Okay, so what would that look like, or what could it look like? And forgive me, this is a very crude mock-up of a little portal, and I'm sure it would look a lot more complicated and detailed than this. But access into our cloud can all be done via API, via command line, via the browser window into our cloud world. So all of these things that we could just present to students, you know, whether they're scaling up, scaling down a database, they could be monitoring it, they could be requesting new environments. They might be getting live feeds of some of how the project's going. There might be some collaboration tools in there, some live chat facilities, but all accessing on that same consistent platform that's all secure, all manageable, and all monitored through the same window. So it's starting to sound like it might be quite compelling to approach this more on this platform level than it might be on a infrastructure only. So, I mean, it's slightly tongue-in-cheek earlier when I was talking about, you know, gravitational wave exploration as a service. Of course, there probably isn't an application that does that. But let's say from this project that something came out of it that was pretty good and actually had some commercial value. We can start to think about, well, I've built that on this platform. It's a built application that has the, you know, the database, the web server, the application server. Why don't I monetize that? So we have the cloud marketplace. Now, this is Oracle's cloud marketplace. There are others. Amazon have a cloud marketplace, Cloud Foundry. I mean, all of our spenders that have cloud basically have a place to monetize projects. At a cloud day we had, I'm trying to think when it was, I think it was November last year, at the O2. I was speaking to a gentleman from UCL, he might even be here, I don't know. And he was talking about some of the brilliant projects some of the students worked on. One I particularly remember was the Boris bikes in London. Wave if you're here. No, okay. So the Boris bike's in London. When you take the bike and you obviously pay for the bike and you drop off the bike somewhere, you get an alert on your phone that says, if you can take this bike to the next one because they're shorter bikes, the next bike that you get will be cheaper. It was just like a really simple, great application. And they said, thanks very much. Well done, you've passed your masters and whatever. And they bin it. And then they start all over again. I think that application had great commercial value. I think that would be something that you could put on the marketplace and actually say, yes, it looks pretty good, and we could probably get some return on that. Anyway. I'm sorry, this probably doesn't, you can't see this very well on the slide, but I talked about the research project. But what about your own internal IT? This was a portal we put together for actually an Australian university, where they were just saying to us, can you sort of show us through the platform services how we as, and this was business people inside the university, not IT, can build some stuff. Because one of the principles we were talking about earlier was easier. How can I make stuff easier? Wouldn't it be great if you could just say back to the business sometimes, you guys can handle that, you do it, okay? So the people in the business side of things in this Australian university, they managed to build a Manage My Degree portal. They managed to have a message board up and running. There was some other stuff on there about student onboarding they managed to do as well. So once a student came to the university, they could watch certain videos that were applicable to the courses they selected. And this is all done with zero code on Oracle's content and process platform. So again, there's a lot of value in this platform that can be unlocked. So I've talked a lot about public cloud. Let's check time. We're okay, a few minutes. Is it just about public cloud? Well, we have some beliefs in Oracle that it shouldn't just be. Nobody's going to switch off all their on-premise stuff tomorrow and move to the cloud. It's just not a reality. It doesn't work that way. So what we've done in terms of our cloud services is we took our things like our database, our middleware, some of our content management, our business intelligence, and we didn't change anything. We've added some new functions, but principally speaking, architecturally speaking, and standard speaking, it's all the same stuff. Why is that important? Because it means that if you want to take your database that's on-premise and move it to the cloud, you can. It's a few clicks of a button. I promise it is. It's not just a Larry Ellison demo. You can actually do it. I can do it, and I'm not a technical guy. I might want to test and dev up in the public cloud and bring it back onto premise again. I can do that. It's the same code. It's the same architecture. It's very, very easy. So you don't have to invest in anything back on this end to make that stuff work when you bring it back on premise. Okay? It'll just work. It's the same stuff. But we think that's very important, and we think that's should be an answer to a lot of problems that people may have in terms of moving to cloud. We talked a bit about this before, but public cloud lends itself very well to showing people who's using what. I mean, if you buy some Oracle Cloud, you can say, well, look, Joe's using that database, and he's using X amount of storage and this amount of memory, and you can see all that because that's what public cloud does, and it should do that. But all this stuff actually is available back on premise as well. So we can do that at a software level. We can show you metering of who's using what. Chargeback can be controlled through the software mechanisms. So if you've built private cloud capability, and I think the example was the chemistry lab wants a database, that's fine. You can either charge back automatically or just show back. If you just want to demonstrate, well, what was the cost, what did you actually do, rather than actual chargeback, then that can be done through the software. And I said before, management is a really key thing. How do I manage, how do I monitor all this stuff? Well, again, because for Oracle, we have this coexistent strategy. We believe that on-premise and cloud should just work together. It just should. That you should be able to therefore manage it through a single pane of glass. So if you currently use Oracle and you use like Enterprise Manager to manage that estate, well, you can see your public cloud through that too. You can see Database Cloud Service. You can see your WebLogic in the cloud, Java Cloud Service, as well as you can see private cloud. So again, we believe that's an important thing. Last slide. So is this real? Is anybody actually doing this stuff? Well, the answer is yes. I'll put my hand up. We're not great at marketing ourselves, and that's why when you sort of think cloud, you think Amazon, you think Microsoft. But we have a huge number. We have like 45 billion transactions per day happening on our cloud across our SaaS and PaaS and IaaS. We have 19 data centers globally, 195 or more countries accessing those data centers. And by the way, other cloud vendors tend to run their stuff on Oracle too. You know, if you ask Salesforce, what's the database underneath your platform? It's Oracle. So we're really good at helping other organizations manage their and run their clouds too. So it's just some statistics. You may be saying, so what? Because you're probably thinking, Dave, that's great. It's probably really expensive. It's not. It's, so our recent statistics show that we are at least 20% cheaper than the biggest leading infrastructure as a service organization, if you look at our infrastructure. These stats are just out. There is a white paper available. If you grab me afterwards, I can share it with you. Give you an idea of, it's a bit of an extreme one, but we can archive files in the cloud, objects in the cloud, for $0.001 of a dollar per gigabyte per month. Okay? What's the nearest competitor? It's Amazon Glacier, actually, at $0.007 of a dollar. So we're 7 times cheaper. So it might be surprising to hear that Oracle the barrier to entry is pretty low. But what I said right at the beginning is we're later to this party. We're not ashamed by that, but it'd be pretty stupid if we came in with a really high price tag, because no one would buy it, right? So we have the luxury of hindsight. We have that hindsight from a number of points of view. One is from actually technically how do we build this really well, and we can look at where other people have some of the challenges that others have had. But we can also do that from a price point of view. So that's all I'm going to say. I think we might have literally 2 minutes if there are any questions. It doesn't have to be about that, by the way. I don't think there are any hands up. There's a hand. So it's from a cost point of view, do you say, or from a just? Oh, yeah, great question. So the question was, are we trying to attract just new customers into our cloud, or what about our existing customers with on-premise licenses? Well, the answer is both. We love to win new customers. It's a great thing. We call it, new logo acquisition in Oracle. It's a great thing. But no, absolutely, we think the market is moving towards cloud. Everybody's moving towards cloud. It's not deniable, that fact. I think some numbers skew that. So we want to be able to give our existing customers a way to move to cloud too. So that's from a technical point of view and also from a commercial point of view. Our team is here. There's a stand out there. You can go and ask them. We're working on some stuff. We might not have it absolutely 100% finished right now, but we're working on a way, because a lot of people have got campus-based licenses. We're thinking about how we do that. So please stay in contact with us on that, because we want to make that work for you in terms of how you can take some of that existing environment and move towards cloud. So does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay. I think we're out of time. Could you all please join me in thanking David for his talk? I'm sure if you've got any follow-up questions, David will be down at the Oracle stand during the refreshment break, which is now downstairs, and we're back in here in half an hour.